So welcome to the wonderful world of vector software, in this particular case, Adobe Illustrator. Just looking at the toolbar alone before we even enter the program can be rather intimidating for beginners. I understand that. I was there about 20 years ago. But having used this program for 2 decades now, I find it one of my favorite creative outlets and tools and multiple tools. So I'm not going to try to cover everything by any means. That would be impossible. But let's just look at the real basics of navigating a new artboard, moving around, adding a few things like shapes and type. So the first thing you want to do is launch Illustrator and then create a new document. And we're going to pick here along the top menu Print as the destination for it. And I'm going to change my increments to inches, which will be a lot easier to deal with, and the orientation to landscape. Okay, and we don't need multiple artboards right now, so we'll talk about that later, and just click Create. Now it'll take, again, a few seconds as you saw. Now here's our blank artboard ready to work. Now, we're not quite ready usually until we set up, like in the traditional sense of a studio, our working environment. And so under View menu at the top, I like to turn on the rulers. You can notice that we're in inches there, 11 by 8.5 in this case. Also, you might want to tell it to show the grid, which is, of course, won't print, but just is very helpful. Up here where it says, it might even say Essentials to start with. Mine I had used before on typography. That just refers to the actual workspace. In other words, the look and feel of your application window. You can see there's all these pre-made ones by Adobe to help you out to find the tools you need for that particular emphasis in designing. But typography is fine to start with. It's a good starting point, I think, for this class. And notice as I move these panels around, they're all under Window menu from A to Z. So if there's a check by them, it means it's visible on your desktop and your workspace. And you need to customize these each time that you work, however you like to do it. To streamline the process, I'm of course moving kind of quickly here, and I'm arranging some things kind of on the fly. But you can view and zoom out and zoom in, and then you can fit the artboard in the window. If you get totally lost, and it's possible to zoom in like 6,000% and not know where you are in space. But in this case, arrange some of the tools and so forth, and then what I will do normally, especially first time out, is just go to Window Workspace, New Workspace, and just call it something that will work for you. My workspace is very generic, but that'll work. Okay, and that way that will always show up as one that when you launch the Illustrator the next time to work, you can go to My Workspace and all of the panels will be where they're supposed to be and so forth. Just a good way to kind of organize your work, okay, before you even get started. Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based program, which simply means from point to point to point to make these various graphic elements, whether it's a line or a shape or text, it's made up of mathematically based points, okay? You don't have to worry about math is the good news. So for instance, I grabbed from the toolbar over there, the rectangle tool. Just you can try to follow and do everything that I do here in this demo. If you have to watch it a few times, that's fine. But I want you to just experiment here with no pressure at all. Just very low stress situation. And if you don't first get it, then go back and watch a second time, and hopefully you can catch the different things that I have on the tutorials, okay? I just grabbed the type tool, clicked a box, and typed up the word basics. You can make any font you want. Made it pretty large, actually. We'll tweak that a little bit later. But for right now, just understand that, you click and drag on the artboard if you want to, with the tool that you choose. You can edit the artboards under Document Setup. We'll leave that alone for now because it's too soon, since we only have one artboard that we're working on anyway. But that's a hugely convenient way that you can have different size artboards in the same document, and that'll come in handy later on. More about the shape tools in a future tutorial about shape, but let's grab the ellipse tool and let's draw with hold the shift key down. We'll constrain the tool proportionally. So in other words, shift, click, and drag will make a perfect circle. And these are arbitrary colors I'm picking from the color picker panel. Note that you have a fill color and a stroke color, and by the default color mode, by the way, is in a program like this is CMYK, which is 4-color mode. More about that also in detail later on. But I would go ahead and actually start saving this. Sometimes people start naming it at the beginning, but I would just make a new folder and probably literally name the folder on your desktop AI for Adobe Illustrator Basics. Create that folder and then save the file, preferably with your last name. For anything I ask you to take up as an exercise and grade, I want you to use your last name and then an underscore and then a brief description. So for this one, AI Basics is fine. So far, hopefully you've gotten the square and the circle and filled it with whatever color you want to fill it with. Now, I'm zooming in with the zoom tool. Okay, if that went fast, the zoom tool looks like a little magnifying glass. And notice if you hold Option and click on the tool, it will kind of do the opposite, like it will pan and zoom out. Okay, there's the hand tool next door on the toolbar, and no brainer, it kind of click and drag and it moves you around the artboard. Okay, it kind of moves the artboard around as if you were shuffling your paper on your workspace. Okay, why don't you draw a star, which will be a default 5-pointed star most likely for you. The other thing to note is if you get the star tool again and just click once on the artboard, here you can kind of do it by the numbers. And so, for instance, I said, give me an 8-pointed star. And then I just, for variety, just filled it with kind of a mustard yellow color. Okay, that's a pretty nice feature that you can do with all of the basic shape tools. Is just click once with the tool that you want, and then you can ask it to give you exactly what you want, or you can just eyeball it. Again, the view menu is important. I just shifted to outline view, which is sort of like a wireframe, to show you. Sometimes it's the best way, and frankly the only way sometimes, the outline view, to find things that might seem to be hidden, but they're actually underneath another object, or piece of type is somewhere different, and you can find it typically under the outline view, and then switch back when you want to see everything with the fill attributes and things applied to it to the GPU preview. Okay. There again, I just picked my text box, just direct selected it. I decided I didn't like the font I started with, so I changed it to Garamond Regular, made it 72 point. You can change that as much as possible. Also, to copy that, just make a quick copy of anything. You can hold the Option key and then Select tool, click and drag, and it'll make a copy of whatever you have selected. And I did that just to save me some time. Duplicated the type box, and then I went in there with the type tool and typed in the word type. Again, you can kind of see that I've outlined the type, okay, which is under the type menu, which simply means to create outlines of type. It's not text anymore that could be edited. Like I couldn't go in and, if I made a typo, retype it, but it's now objects, and it's by default a group. So if I do ungroup now, the word type, it's just 4 individual letters. See, so now I can click like on each letter individually, and all I'm doing here is just for show and demo purposes, kind of using the left arrow on the keyboard and just kind of nudging them and trying to kind of optically put the same amount of space. It's not perfect, but we'll get into typography issues and the fine nitty-gritty stuff with type in a later tutorial. But you can see then is once you get things arranged like you want, you probably want to go to Object Group, and then you might say, where did it go? Well, it was added after the circle, so remember, just go to Object, now it's an Object, Arrange, and bring it to the front, and there, that way it's in front of or sitting on top of the green circle. And I just decided it was a little bit, I mean, while it's complementary colors, I decided to change that to white. Okay, now, last thing, very, very important to use and work smartly is understanding how layers work. As the name suggests well, this is a way to a sort of a stacking order of things that you add to your artboard incrementally. So notice here, I have everything on layer 1. If I create a layer 2, and you can name a layer anything, but I mean, use an obvious, common sense kind of thing. I'm going to name this one Guides, so try that. And this is a way then, for instance, notice all I'm doing with the selection tool is grabbing the top ruler, horizontal guide, dragging over the vertical ruler, another vertical, another vertical. These are somewhat randomly placed right now, but in future projects, it'll be important for you to, if you need to place guides on a page, especially when we're using like a template, those are guides that will not be printable, but they'll be visible. And see how I just click the little eyeball in the layers panel, and I also can click the little panel next to the eyeball, and it puts a little padlock. So create as many layers as you need, and then you can lock a layer as you go, is how I usually work at it. In this case, we don't have to start over at all. When I started adding my random shapes and stuff a while ago, I didn't know how I wanted to organize them. Now this layers is a great way to organize them. So all I'm doing is clicking what's called the little radio button to select what sits on that layer, and then I'm just dragging it up. And so seeing how the 2 stars are on a layer by itself, and if you click on that, it shows you the selection of just those things sitting on that layer. The active layer that you want to work on and manipulate things does have to be highlighted, and it's a very light sort of grayish blue. So make sure, some people get confused and say, well, why is that not happening? It's probably because you're not on the layer that you think you're on. Green circle, again, try that. That's the ellipse. Just drag that little box up, that little colored square, and drop it on the layer. And now you can look at it, make it visible or invisible, right? And it's still there. And it's totally up to you to get used to this, but I always want you, especially for class projects beginning soon, that you work in layers. It's just working smart. Plus, it'll save you a ton of time, especially when you're trying to kind of deconstruct a complex graphic, to work in layers incrementally. That way, if something goes wrong with a layer, you can always delete just that layer and then not have to start over. And you can see this is all the ones we're going to do for today. Okay, that is a very, very quick introduction to a very powerful software application, Adobe Illustrator.